I'll start off by saying good afternoon, Jenny Cheng. I have the good fortune of running the product organization at a company called InsideView. We bring market intelligence to B2B sales, marketing, and customer success managers by really helping bring insights into the companies and contacts that you guys are all looking at, whether it's from the top of the funnel, from a lead perspective, all the way through from a customer renewal retention perspective. So what I wanted to talk about is one of the lone product leaders here, and when Influitive asked me to talk, I gave a little thought about, really what is customer experience from a product perspective. And what I'll start off by saying is, about 10 years ago, if I was talking to the same group of folks here, sorry, my mic keeps cutting out. If I was talking to the same group of folks here, I would guess that the majority of you would say customer experience is owned by the product and the product team. And as a product leader in the B2B SaaS space, I love that answer and really, really love being kind of in the center of the universe. But fast forward to today, and product is no longer the center of the universe. And that is the reality of product leaders everywhere in any company. And really, the customer experience now is really centered around all of you and every part of the organization. And why is that? When you think about the last, especially 5 years, change is really accelerating. Our buyers, our customers, are much more sophisticated now than they were a couple years ago. They come to the table with a lot more knowledge of their market, of the product, of your competitors. And they're coming in very well informed. They're coming in knowing what they want and how they like to interact with you from a customer perspective. And when you think about how the world has changed in the last couple years, 10 years ago, the iPod had just come out, right? There was no social, there was no mobile first. And really the social and mobile first has really changed the customer engagement process. When you look at kind of everything that's accelerating in the world, the amount of data that's being created on a regular basis in the 10 to 15 minutes that I'm talking to you guys is astronomical. In 10 minutes, we have, on average in the world, we have over 15,000 babies born in 10 minutes. And so everything is accelerating, and the market out there is accelerating with it. So what do we do? What should we do, and how should we react? Well, I think we start off by acknowledging that product is no longer in the center of the universe, and that really we have to go from a product-first perspective to really a customer-centric and a customer-first experience. And what that really means is that in the past, people would come to the table and say it was all about the user experience of the product, right? And the first touch was focused on the product. Did the customer like the product? How was your NPS from a product perspective? And really the difference now is that that alone is only one piece of the pie. And as customers are coming in from the first touch, their interaction is really either from an email campaign that some of you marketers have sent, it's from the website and the first experience of the website, and it's all the way through from the customer life cycle at the end. So what do we do? Well, at InsideView this last year, we really looked at what we needed to do to really engage our customers and to change that customer experience. And what we started off with is we said we have to change. We have to adapt, and we have to acknowledge that the market is different out there. And what that meant is we had to commit to our customers. So what we started off doing was we looked at how are we engaging with our customers today? Well, like a lot of you out there, we have a customer advisory board. And we looked at our customer advisory board, and we looked at how we were interacting with our customer advisory board over the last couple of years. And it really was a one-way conversation. We would tell them something. They would tell us something. And the reality is neither side was really gaining a lot of value from that process. So we looked at our customer advisory board and we said we really need to engage in a discussion, right? And a discussion really had to do with, what are your pain points? What are the things you guys are looking for? What are your tough challenges? And look at it from a persona perspective, right? Our sales folks, whether you're in sales ops or you're customer-facing AE, to the marketing team. Are you in customer marketing? Are you marketing operations? What is your role and what problem are you trying to solve? And as we had these conversations, we started to see themes that were coming out of each of our customers. And surprisingly, of the top 4 themes, only 2 were really product related. The other 2 were really around the engagement process around the product. And so as part of that, what we did was we listened to those challenges. We listened not just to what our customers asked for, but we also listened to what they were saying were their biggest challenges and what they were trying to do to really impact that lead to revenue funnel. So we took that energy and we had a conversation internally. We said, what are we going to do to affect change and affect change for our customers? And we started off by looking at those requests and figuring out how we could build a roadmap to execute on it. And so I'm happy to say after, within a year, within a couple of months of showing kind of the first progress, we were able to really impact and make a difference on our customers by taking in that input. But the CAB process was not enough. It's really only one piece. And what's really, really interesting about the CAB process for many of you who have customer advisory boards is they're usually your decision makers and they're your buyers, but they're not your end users. So how do we get out there? How do we really create and touch our end users? Well, we started off by actually saying we need a customer marketing focus. We did not have a dedicated person or team focused in that area. So we looked at that, and then we said we need to look at more tools and processes to support that. What are we trying to accomplish? And I was really fortunate at Dreamforce last year, for those of you who attend Dreamforce, to run into Mark, and Mark told me about Influitive. And I said, I'm really excited. I've been excited for a long time about the customer engagement space. I'd had the fortune of spending a lot of years at Salesforce and really helping be part of that initial kind of customer success definition there. And I said, this is great. I have to look at this product and we have to kind of figure out if this would work for InsideView. And I'm happy to say we rolled out Influitive a couple months ago. And while we're very early in our process, what I'm really excited about it is it gives us the opportunity to not just engage with our business decision makers, but really the end users, and to figure out how to get all that rich information back, not just to the marketing team, but to the product team and to people like me who are really trying to build an entire product experience around both the end user and our buyer, because we need both that end user and admin focus in any product to make it successful. So what's next? Well, then we took and we looked at the entire company, and we said, who is not part of the end-to-end customer experience? And we had a really good discussion across the organization. And it sounds very obvious, but I just want to highlight that it doesn't matter whether you have a direct or indirect interaction with the customer. It could be the email that comes from your finance system, right? Every one of these touch points really adds up to the end-to-end customer experience. And as many of you know, as we've moved more and more into the SaaS cloud space now, this journey is not linear. It really is progressive and iterative, and it's every part of the organization. And I was told by my business ops person that I left business ops off. So hopefully no one here from finance, except maybe one person I met. So apologize for that. But if you look at this, it really is a big shift in how we approach our end-to-end customer experience today. In the past, it used to be very, very linear, right? You went from marketing, sales, product, and then really the interaction was more on the customer support side. side of the house. Well, today, because we are in a very different economy where we are looking to make sure that our customers are committed at every day, at every interaction, the reality is this is a very iterative process. And if we're doing our jobs correctly, then we're obviously continuing to sell and grow those customers at each point of the process. Next, a lot of people have asked me in the past, what does this mean? And how do you actually create an end-to-end customer experience? And a lot of it has been about building a successful plan. It's honestly a never-ending process. So what I'll start off by saying is everyone really has to create their own definition of success and define their own success criteria. And as part of that process, what I would encourage you to do is look at, are you a B2C company? Are you a B2B company? Because your success criteria, your engagement process will be different, as your product is also different from an engagement perspective. And as part of this, then, what I would encourage you to do is think a lot about building a plan that is iterative and has success milestones along the way. As a product person in the last 10 to 15 years, I've been a big fan of an agile development methodology. And for those of you who are not familiar with agile, it's really a philosophy that's built around iterations, learning from those iterations, and continuing to improve and continuing to deliver success on an incremental basis. And so as part of this process, I think it really is about building a plan where you do have a long-term end goal, but you're looking to deliver success iteratively along the way. And if you look at this picture, it's really a picture of the Eiffel Tower back in the late 1980s as it was being built. And the Eiffel Tower took 50 designers and engineers just to come up with the plan on how they were going to execute to actually build this in time for the World Fair at that time. And as part of that, what they realized was they really did have to look at it as both a on-site and off-site process. They had to build pieces off-site, bring it on-site. They had to think about how to build this up. And they had to figure out how to build it up, essentially floor by floor by floor. And it took 300 people over the course of 2 years and 2 months to build this engineering feat. And I could relegate you with a lot of data, but one of the ones that I like the best is that it has 2.5 million rivets involved in the process. And if you think back in the 1880s, just the process of creating that many rivets was an engineering feat, and getting that done in time to actually build the Eiffel Tower. And so as part of that, I think what we should all be looking at is making sure we have that final end goal as part of that process, but we're approaching it and we can celebrate the successes as we build floor by floor. And I know I'm preaching to the choir because I think there are a lot of marketers here, but I will say that the next thing you need to do in terms of your customer success plan and really creating that end-to-end process is being able to connect with your customers and build that relationship with stories. And as many of you know, stories really are the foundation of building customer loyalty these days. Nielsen has this great study out probably about 2 years ago where they reference that customers who really want to engage and understand the brands that they buy, right? They want to feel an emotional connection to them. And as part of that, it is our responsibility at every point of the process to really be able to tell that story and to connect with that customer in that process. And it was fun this morning to hear Mark talk a little bit about left brain, right brain as it relates to customer advocacy and customer engagement. Because if you think about how a story impacts us, this is a picture, for those of you who don't know, of one of my favorite movies called The Princess Bride. And it's a romantic comedy, but it's really told from, the story is told by the grandfather who's sharing the story with his sick grandson. And the grandson is at first resisting, wanting to hear the story, But as the story progresses, you see him getting more and more engaged. And so I would encourage you guys to kind of think about that as you're telling your stories, because a lot of what happens to us as we're listening to a story is our brains really react in a couple different ways. And Fast Company had a great article about this last year and a great infographic. And what it starts off with is, as we're listening to a story, our dopamine levels increase. So it makes us actually a lot more content, a lot more interested, a lot more engaged. It raises our energy level. Then next, what happens is our cortex really, the activity in our cortex combines our left brain and our right brain and really gets us engaged from both a logical perspective and an emotional perspective. So we're really consuming the information and the emotion that's coming out of that story. Then, for those neuroscientists in the room, neural coupling then takes that information, and then what it does is it connects. What we are doing is we're listening to the story, is we're saying, how does that apply to me? Have I had that experience? We're really personalizing it and making it our own. And then last but not least, as you're listening to the story and you're listening to the storyteller, your brain starts mirroring the emotions that you're feeling and sensing from the story and the storyteller. And all of this is happening in the course of a story. So as storytellers, it's our responsibility to make sure that we have that connection in every engagement that we have. And that we're teaching not just our salespeople to tell stories, we're teaching our support people that as part of that process, I may be answering a very simple question in my customer support team, and what we're doing as part of that is we're explaining the why, right? We have to use every opportunity to explain the why and to tell a story around it to really connect the dots. I happen to have had the ability to go visit our team in India at InsideView. Our support team is in India, and in that process, actually visit and stay on a customer call. And we have very few customer calls. We do a lot through email these days. And as part of that, it was very, very fun to listen to the support person get on the phone, listen to the customer, repeat what the customer said, right? This is me acknowledging you. This is a conversation. And then be able to tell the story of the why. In this case, it was an example where the customer was calling and thinking that the product worked a certain way, it didn't work that way, and the support engineer took the opportunity to explain the why and to tell a story on really, and this is really how it works, this is why it works, and this is how we think it could benefit you and drive value for you, Mr. Customer or Miss Customer. And as part of that process, by the end of the call, the customer said, oh, I really get it. I get it. I understand why that works that way, and that makes sense to me. So thanks. And it was such a positive call, and I'm sure there were probably other calls that were less positive, but this call was very positive. And as part of that process, I think what it was our support engineer really engaged in telling the story, explaining the why, and using that opportunity to let the customer react. So storytelling, as many of you know, what it really does is it connects the dots between the information, the context, and the emotion, and makes the entire process memorable. And that's ultimately what we're looking for as marketers, as salespeople, customer success people, and product people. We're looking for our customer experience to be memorable. So how do we create this unified customer experience? Again, commitment, 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 commitment. And obviously, if you need to acknowledge that there is something you need to change and adapt, then start there. But ultimately, it is about committing to your customer. The next part of that process really is about prioritizing. And as I mentioned, it has to be an end-to-end experience at your company. And I really encourage you guys to talk to your cross-functional peers and make sure there's an alignment in that customer journey. From the brand perspective, from the outbound, from the PR, all the way through your product experience, and ultimately through the engagement at any post-sales process. Next, it's really about iteration. I think, at InsideView, we're still working on our customer end-to-end experience and story. We look forward to continuing to build it on top of Influitive, for example. But ultimately, it's about iterating. It's about measuring that iteration success, adjusting, and then continuing on. And then last but not least, it really is about building that relationship with your customer. And I focused a lot on storytelling in this example because ultimately I think when you connect with someone, you end up naturally telling stories, sharing stories, and that's part of our DNA as humans. So with that, I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. People won't remember necessarily what you said. They may not remember what you do, but ultimately they're going to remember how they felt and how they feel in the experience that they have with you. And so I just want to share that, and I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of day at Advocamp.